Hey everyone, today in this video, I'm going to be checking out the Viewedge. This is their CS27FK. This is a 1080p 27-inch 180 Hz IPS display. Viewedge is sponsoring today's video, but I want you to know that any opinion expressed in this video is strictly my own. That being said, if you're interested in this product or you want to find out more about it, the link to this monitor will be in the video description. Take a look at the retail box and packaging. Very simple and straightforward. Now let's go ahead, let's open it up and see what's inside. Here are all the contents. First up, we have our product literature consisting of a thank you card and setup guide right here, walking you through everything you need to know to get this up and running. They even have your operating instructions there and tech specs down below. You can see the other side with some additional information. Next, we have the power supply, US plug with barrel connector, close-up of the power supply. You can see the specs there. One included HDMI cable, the stand, which consists of two pieces, both made out of plastic with metal right there. And then last but definitely not least, the Viewedge monitor. Let's look at this up close. Starting with the back side, front and center, we got the Viewedge logo and branding, VESA mount option here, built-in speakers, Kensington security lock, stand release, that's the little push lever there. Additional product info. Let's flip it up. We can look at the ports right here. So power plug, two HDMI ports, display port, and then we got our audio jack there. And here's all of our menu and control buttons at the very bottom. Here's your side profile. Look at how slim and thin it is up at the top. About 2/3 of the way down the screen. Then it gets a little bit thicker towards the bottom there. You can see that again from the top down view, really thin, and then a little bit wider towards the base. And then here's a look at the very front of the monitor, Viewedge logo and branding, all of our icons for our buttons with an indicator light for the power button. 27 inches measured diagonally. And if we're looking at the monitor, right where my tip of the thumb is, that's where the pixels are actually going to stop, even though we got that bezel-less design on the sides and the very top of this monitor. Now let's set it up and try it out. All right, monitor's all set up and ready to go. The included stand just gives you tilt functionality. There's no height adjustment, swivel rotation, or anything like that. But it does have that VESA mount. Again, if you want to add your own stand, you can. Looking at our display settings here, I wanted to walk you through the resolution and refresh rate. We are getting 1920 by 1080p at 180 Hertz. And you have the option, if you want to choose a different refresh rate option, you can, all the way down to 50, but we got 165, 144, 120. You get the idea. You can change that right there. If you're not seeing as high of numbers, make sure you're using the proper HDMI or DisplayPort cable to get the best and fastest. I'd recommend using a DisplayPort cable like we are using here to get 1080p and 180 Hertz with our Windows PC. Now let's take a look at the menu. So it took us a couple of tries to get the menu up by pressing the menu button. It's a little wonky from our experience, not the smoothest, but here's our luminance settings. Then we'll move right along. We have our image settings. There's your low blue light mode you can adjust. We have our color options. You can choose different color temps or set your own. Then we have our OSD. If you ever need to reposition it or change the language, you can. Then we have our reset option that also includes our mute and volume for the built-in speakers. And then lastly, we have our other settings here, input select. We can turn things on or off like adaptive sync, overdrive, or NPRT. So you can toggle between those right there. And then we also have our quick keys. So the first arrow is going to be your brightness. The second one's going to be your volume. So you can quickly access those right there as well. And then we have our power button with the illuminated light. It lights up blue when you have signal and the monitor's on. I wanted to spend another minute showing you the different picture presets here as we watch the same clip over and over again for each one. I'll choose and select them very quickly so you can see how the same scene is affected with the different presets here. They're under the luminance and eco mode option. So we got movie, game, energy, standard, back to movie. You can see how the brightness, contrast, and black levels change between each one. So just pick and choose which one you like best, depending on the content you're consuming or the game that you're playing. But I like to cycle through those quickly so you can see how they're affecting and changing the image on screen. And in this case, you can just watch the bars too, as we see the different settings change. So pretty quick scenes there, but wanted to cycle through them all for you. We'll do it one more time. Game, energy, standard, movie, back to game. So quick little image presets there. Next up is my favorite test. This is one of 2 UFO tests that we'll show you on this monitor. The first one here is frame rate testing. So we have different frame rates moving along the screen. So our UFO is just flying through space at 45 FPS, 90 FPS, and 180 FPS, again at 1080p, 180 hertz. So look at that difference there on the footage. It's clear as day. As we increase that FPS value and get closer and closer or match our refresh rate, look at how smooth that footage is. So any sort of games that you want to play with that higher frame rate, if you can push it with your system and get close or match that 180 FPS range or 165 or 144, you'll appreciate how good the footage will look moving across the screen there. This is just a really nice way to visualize that at different FPS values to get a better feel for the 180 FPS at 180 hertz. Buttery smooth as that UFO is moving right along through space. And for our second and final UFO test, this is the ghosting test right here. So visually looking at this monitor, typically what you see when there's bad ghosting with this UFO, it's going to really smear that UFO, whether it's the green head, it's the yellow top of the saucer, it's the white line or the red on the saucer, all being smeared and moved around as it's going by, kind of streaking and being left behind. In this case, though, I am way impressed with what I'm seeing here. I did not have high expectations, to be honest with you guys, and count me impressed. This definitely is on the lower or least amount of ghosting versus way too much ghosting or anything like that. So I was expecting to be more in that camp where it'd have a lot of ghosting. It might be uncomfortable for your viewing experience. That's not the case at all from what I'm seeing right here as that UFO is moving across the screen. Looks really good visually. Is it perfect? By no means, but in regards to ghosting, it's definitely on the lower side. If we would quantify it, it has less ghosting than we typically see, which is great to see at a monitor in this bracket in regards to price and performance. Next, let's talk about IPS glow and backlight bleed. We didn't notice any IPS glow, which is great. Typically on IPS displays, you may notice a little glowing here or there. It's really not a big deal unless it's like super distorting colors and things like that, which we have yet to see. Anyways, looking at backlight bleeding, this we conduct in a pitch black room, looking at a full screen of black. So looking at black in the pitch black, and in this case, if we noticed anything, it was going to be very minimal. So we noticed a little bit up here on this corner, and then a little bit on the side, just like right there on the monitor. Would you be able to notice it yourself? Probably not. How often are you looking at a black screen in the black? And then if you are you angled right to even see a little bit here or there? Very common, nothing to be concerned of, and what we would expect in just about any monitor we see. If we look hard enough and critically enough, we'll be able usually to find some backlight bleed. I don't want you to be worried or concerned. Very normal, nothing out of the ordinary. That's the key here, nothing out of the ordinary. Next up is a less serious test, but still important in my opinion. This is what we call the web browsing test. I'm just pulling up a couple popular web pages here so you can get a better feel for the browsing experience as you use this monitor throughout your day-to-day. First, we're looking at the YouTube trending page right here. So you can see how everything loads, how responsive the monitor is, and how enjoyable, in my opinion, the viewing experience is. Take all this with a grain of salt. Throughout this video, you're watching a camera pointed at a screen on your screen. It's not going to be as good as if you were here in the studio with us, laying eyes on this yourself. But there's YouTube, followed by TechCrunch, which is a popular tech blog. So you can see different fonts, headers, images, ads. You get the idea. Let's go ahead. We can click on one. So look at the colors, different fonts. embedded videos, but clear, crisp, everything's detailed. And with IPS, I mean, you have fantastic viewing experiences, even off to the side like I am here. Colors aren't distorted or anything like that. And then lastly, maybe you want to do a little bit of online shopping with your monitor, right? Product images look great. Colors rich, vibrant. Your typical IPS viewing experience, which is always my favorite. Now we're testing out the built-in speakers. We have the volume at 100. We're listening to the song Dripping with Ice by Music Chef. Let's give it a listen. Now we have the volume at 75. Wouldn't say there's much of a noticeable change. Now it's at 50, same thing. It's gotten a little quieter as we've made it to 25. And now we're down to 10. And we'll turn it back up. As I always say, I'd rather have the speakers and not need them than need the speakers and not have them. Now it's time for us to measure input lag. So this has an advertised 1 millisecond response time, MPRT, but input lag is going to be the amount of time it takes your monitor to display a signal on screen from when the source sends it. So in this case, from when this red box sends the signal until it's displayed on our display. Our input lag's coming in right around 1.1, 1.2 milliseconds, which is great to see. That's always going to be our lowest value. Then in the middle, we should be around that 8-second mark, 8.7 milliseconds. 1.1, 8.7, and then at the bottom, we'll see, we'll be right at that 16 milliseconds. That's great. Anything around that 1.1 is fantastic. For those curious, typically in that top quadrant, right now our database is showing that we average about 3.6 milliseconds, but I'd say a lot of monitors usually fall in that 1.1 to like 1.7 or 8 range. We have a couple outliers that really drive that up. In that middle range, we're averaging about 10.1. But again, solid 8s if we're getting that, mid to low ones there at the top. And then the very bottom, we're averaging about 16.5, 16.6. And again, we came in right at 16 even. Now let's talk about color accuracy and representation. So looking at our coverages and volumes, we'll start with sRGB. We're showing 99.8% sRGB coverage and 143.1% for our volume. All of this was conducted with DisplayCal. You'll see for Adobe RGB, 81.8% coverage and 98.6% for volume. And lastly, DCI P3, we're showing 96.9% coverage and 101.4% volume. We haven't seen results this high across the board on a monitor like this, specifically the DCI P3 values there. That's probably a testament to the IPS panel and display that they're using here from a color standpoint, but overachieving big time with the colors for this particular monitor and what you're paying for it. The moment you've all been waiting for, how does this monitor handle gaming? Let's take a look at some gameplay footage from popular titles to get a better feel for the quality of this monitor playing some of your favorite games. Don't worry, I haven't forgotten about you console gamers. We have a PlayStation 5 connected. This is the current video output signal. We're showing by default 1920 1080p at 60 Hz. This is a 180 Hz refresh rate display, but that's not what the PlayStation 5 supports. You can get that with your computer. For a console, you can expect 1920 1080 at 60, or depending on the game that you're playing, make sure you enable 120 Hz output. So the max you'll be able to get on the PlayStation 5 is 1080p at 120 Hz. Again, if your game supports it. And same holds true with the Xbox. We got the Xbox Series X connected right here. Take a look. We have our 1920 1080p resolution and up to 120 Hz for our refresh rate. So that's what you can expect with next-gen consoles using this monitor. So where's that leave us with our Viewedge monitor? Well, let me share with you my final thoughts. First, in regards to the design, very slim up at the top here in the near bezel-less design is a welcome addition for the front. Typically on these really aggressively priced monitors, you don't get all of the typical design elements, but it's great to see that we still have that on this particular monitor. I did mention how aggressively priced this monitor is, so very budget and value friendly for our budget conscious shoppers out there. Also want to point out that at 27 inches, that IPS display has fantastic viewing angles, and they overachieve, they're above average on the color accuracy and representation, so it looks really good at that larger screen size. And I was pleasantly surprised with the minimal ghosting that we experienced on this monitor, so count me impressed. Now, what would I want to see improve with this monitor in the future? Well, I understand that there's compromises that have to be made at a very competitively priced monitor like this, but there are some things I'd still like to see tweaked or improved if possible. The first and biggest one is going to be the menu button. For some reason, our menu button just didn't seem as responsive as the other buttons. You have to push it like 3 or 4 times sometimes to get it to register that you're pressing the button. The second thing is I love the built-in speakers, because I always say I'd rather have speakers and not need them than need them and not have them. But they're not very loud. They're not going to replace your external speakers or your headphones or things like that. So maybe some increased quality on the speakers so we can get some better sounding audio. Not terrible. Again, I'd rather have them, not need them, than need them and not have them. But they are internal speakers on a very budget-friendly monitor, so you get the idea there. And then lastly, the stand is very average, so just the tilt functionality. I'd love to see some height adjustment, some swivel, some rotation, just anything else to breathe a little bit more life into the stand would be great. Now, the good news here, though, they don't leave you hanging. You literally have an option to hang your monitor if you want, or add your own monitor mount with their VESA mount on the back.